Hi, my name's Clarence Vaughn. I am doing my video for my final presentation for this class. I just want to go over my slideshow presentation, give you a idea of what I was working on here. This is from my Intro to Criminal Justice with Professor Michael Neeson. I actually had him for a couple different classes, but an awesome professor. First, we talk about the criminal justice components, which consist of police, courts, and corrections. Police can consist of local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies. Courts usually they deal with the prosecution, defense attorneys, the judge, and possible juries. They could be federal or local courts. With corrections, we deal with jails, prisons, and federal detention facilities. Jails normally tend to be county ran, and prisons are normally, unless they're privatized, deal with state prisons. I've actually worked in both the state prisons and in the county jails. I actually work for Charlotte County right now. Um, Problems with that the justice system faces right now are it's a heavy drug use and a continual crime cycle. People that are getting in trouble for the same offenses or getting into doing worse crimes because of their addiction to drugs. I see that on a regular basis where I'm at. Another problem is youth in the criminal justice system. It's how they're dealing with them, on top of many other things. Having to deal with juveniles is a little more complicated than dealing with an adult. And then we look at the high incarceration rates, especially inside prisons. Could there be lesser crimes could be possibly dealt with outside of a detention facility rather than inside? Also, we face the thing of the possible legalization of different drugs, possibly marijuana, and how are we going to deal with those situations when they do get to that point? Uh, how are officers on the street going to deal with that? We talked about the UCR, which is the Federal Uniform Crime Reporting Program. It's actually ran by the FBI. It is a collection of reports and statistics from different law enforcement agencies, both local, state, federal, all put together into one system. That way, everybody can access it and get an idea of what is going on as far as crime in different areas. Criminal justice traditions, with the history and with present day. Big part that we're dealing with right now is the difference between retribution and rehabilitation. In the old days, a lot of crimes were just punishment. Send them to jail, make them do their time. Nowadays we're focusing more on a rehabilitation and ability to get them hopefully bettered before they get out. That way they could possibly not be a repeating offender. Um, Procedures for an offense and their progression, an offender and their progression in the system. It's going to start with the crimes committed. If it wasn't personally seen by the police officer to where they can make a direct arrest, there'll be an investigation. Once the investigation is done and they find probable cause to make an arrest can be made. Once the arrest is made, they'll be taken to a local facility like a jail or someone like that and placed in a detention facility, whether it be county or federal. They'll wait there until they get their pretrial, where they'll get a determination on whether or not they're going to go to trial or if it's going to be bonded out or probation. And from there, they'll go to trial, and from then on, they'll be go to sentencing, which will be determined by either a jury or a judge. We looked at the Plinian principles, which were actually originated from Sir Robert Peel, who was in the United Kingdom. He provided a modern policing layout for proper policing and to have, to be able to put yourself in a good public eye from or give you a good an eye in front of the public. Make it to where you're being courteous, the transparency of the officers, making the local populace feel comfortable with their law enforcement. Courtroom procedures, the courtroom process is going to start with pretrial hearings. It's going to work its way up for the defense attorneys and the prosecution to present their cases. It's going to go to trial where it'll make a determination on whether or not the decision is going to be made by a judge or if it's going to be made by a jury. It depends on what the defendant decides he wants to do with this case, if he wants to draw it out that far. They could also have pretrial determination where they may just get a fine and be sent out. It depends on the charge. Once they get into the trial, they'll put their statements out, both the defense and the prosecution. They'll have a direct examination where they'll present their case. If they have any witnesses, both parties, both the defense and the prosecution, will get a chance to cross-examine the other person's witnesses and scrutinize on their evidence. And eventually, if it's a jury case, the jury will decide whether or not they're guilty or not guilty, and then the judge will commence with sentencing. The U.S. Constitution and the Supreme Court, Article 3, Section 1 of the Constitution states about the ability to have, for the Supreme Court to have the ability to try cases, but it has to be in a constitutional manner and also has to deal with a federal issue with those kind of cases. But if there is a case that dealt with something that was a constitutional violation and the case was decided on and closed, the Supreme Court has the ability and power to reopen that case if they determine they need to. Other than that, I've really enjoyed this class. I hope this class helps me further into my inevitable career choice I want to be in, which is to work my way up to CSI investigations, forensics, things like that. But I hope to have you class again, and thank you very much, sir.